In this video, we will start exploring how energy is produced in Saskatchewan, and we will discuss the positives and negatives that relate to each of these sources. You will use this information from this video to critique Sask Power's current methods of producing energy for Saskatchewan. As you watch, complete the notes and learning activities. It may help if you pause the video periodically to fill in your information. In Saskatchewan, a variety of sources are used to get power. The three major sources include coal, natural gas, and hydro, or hydroelectric dams. Sask Power uses a balanced approach to power the province. One source would not provide enough power for the province. This balanced approach involves sources for something called baseload, intermediate, intermittent, and peaking. Baseload includes the sources of power that operate all day, every day, and make the basic amount of power that is needed for the province. These include biomass, coal, cogeneration, geothermal, and nuclear. Intermediate sources are those that are a backup plan that boost power when there's a higher demand, like in the winter time. Peaking sources are those that kick in for a short period of time when power demand spikes, like when a Rider game's on TV. Intermittent sources are those sources that can only be used or can only create power when conditions are just right, like wind turbines and solar power. We are going to explore each of the major sources of power. Complete your note chart with the key information about each source, including its positive and negative aspects. Consider the cost, environmental impact, and reliability of each source. The first source we're going to look at is coal. Coal is a fossil fuel that is used and burnt to convert water to steam. The steam turns a turbine to make power. When we look at the positive and negatives of coal, a major negative is the environmental impact. Because coal is a fossil fuel, when it is burnt, it releases CO2 into the air, which is linked to the increase of greenhouse gases. This increase of greenhouse gases is related to the climate change, which negatively impacts the environment. The positives of coal include the fact that coal is cheaper than other fossil fuels, and Saskatchewan has a lot of it as a natural resource. Also, coal-fired generators are very reliable to produce power without many problems. The next major source of power is natural gas. Natural gas is also burnt to create power. When it's burnt, it is used to boil water to create steam to power a generator. Natural gas is relatively affordable, but the price of natural gas can change. So right now it's pretty cheap, but in a few months it may increase and be more expensive. Natural gas produces less carbon dioxide than other fossil fuels, but even though it produces less, there's still an impact on the environment. It also has a high reliability. It is a good way to produce power. The next major source of power generation in Saskatchewan is hydropower. Hydroelectric stations use water in dams to turn turbines to create electricity. Hydro is a good source of power because it is a natural resource, but dams can have a negative impact on the environment, including harming wildlife habitats. The cost of hydro is high at first. Building the dams is very expensive, but once they are built, it has a low operating cost. Although it is a cheaper resource, hydro is not as reliable as other sources because production depends on water level. Geothermal is the next source of power generation. Geothermal power generation, in simple terms, involves using the heat from the earth to heat water and create steam, which turns turbines to create electricity. This source is very environmentally friendly, as it doesn't produce emissions in the air, and it doesn't greatly affect the natural environment. It is very reliable because it relies on the heat from the earth, but more research is needed to fully tap into the full potential. The startup cost of geothermal is quite high, but once the needed facilities are created, the cost would be quite low. Solar power is the next source. Solar power is a source of power from a natural resource. Solar panels are used to capture the energy from the sun. It is one of the cheapest sources of energy, as it is a renewable resource, but it is also one of the most expensive, as the technology needed to capture the energy is quite expensive. Once the initial cost has been paid off, the actual source, the sun, is free. Solar energy is also not very reliable, as the correct conditions must exist to capture the power. Power can only be captured when the sun shines. Nuclear power is the next source. Nuclear power is heat generated by splitting uranium into parts. This causes heat, which boils water, which produces steam. The steam then turns the turbine to generate electricity. In Saskatchewan, we don't have a nuclear power plant, but we do buy power from other provinces that use nuclear power plant to generate power. It's difficult to fully understand the cost, as building a nuclear power plant would be very expensive, but once it was developed, it's actually a very cheap source of power, as the fuel cost is very cheap. Saskatchewan has an abundance of uranium as a natural resource, which would decrease the cost of fuel. The environmental costs are medium, as it produces low levels of carbon dioxide, but the waste from the nuclear fission would need to be dealt with in an environmentally friendly way. Nuclear power, when safety precautions are taken into consideration, is actually a highly reliable source. A nuclear plant can run for long periods without needing to refuel or to be shut down. Biomass is another source of power. The most common form of biomass involves burning wood or wood pellets to boil water and create steam, which turns that turbine to create power or electricity. The cost of biomass is quite high, as the technology is expensive and the fuel source cost can vary depending on what is being used. It is relatively low in terms of environmental cost, as it produces very little greenhouse emissions and can come from renewable resources. The reliability rating is medium, as it's a renewable resource that shouldn't run out, but these sources can be used quickly before they are renewed. Lastly, wind power is a source that involves using the wind to turn a wind turbine to generate electricity. The cost of wind power is medium, as the technology is expensive, but it is getting more affordable. It has very little impact on the environment, as it is a natural resource, but the reliability is low because conditions have to be just right. Wind turbines don't work when there's little wind or too much wind, or it is too cold. That wraps up the video about Sask Power's sources of power. You will use this information to critique Sask Power's plan for powering Saskatchewan.